Sarah had always enjoyed the solitude of her cozy apartment. It was small but charming, with large windows that allowed the moonlight to spill across the wooden floors at night. She often stayed up late, reading or scrolling through her phone. The peace and quiet were comforting, until the night that changed everything. It started innocently enough. Sarah was curled up on her couch, sipping tea and watching a documentary on her laptop. The living room was dimly lit, save for a single lamp in the corner and the flickering glow of the screen. As she stretched to place her empty mug on the coffee table, she caught something out of the corner of her eye, a shadow in the far corner of the room. At first, she dismissed it as a trick of the light. Perhaps the lamp's angle was casting strange shapes, but as she glanced over, the shadow seemed oddly dense. It wasn't attached to anything, no furniture or object that could explain its presence. A chill ran down her spine. Shaking her head, she muttered to herself, "You're just tired. Shadows are just shadows." She went back to her documentary, trying to focus, but the feeling of being watched gnawed at her. Several times, she glanced back at the corner, but the shadow didn't move. It was just there. Still, she couldn't shake the unease creeping up her neck. Finally, she decided to call it a night. As she turned off the lamp, the shadow seemed to dissolve into the darkness. Relieved, she brushed her teeth, climbed into bed, and fell asleep. The whisper at 3:12 a.m., Sarah woke with a start. Her heart pounded in her chest, though she couldn't immediately recall why. The room was silent, except for the faint hum of the fridge in the kitchen. She lay still, trying to convince herself it was just a bad dream. Then she heard it, a faint, raspy whisper. "I see you." The voice was barely audible, but it sent a wave of icy fear through her body. Sarah sat up, her eyes scanning the dark room. Her bedroom door was slightly ajar, allowing a sliver of moonlight to stretch across the floor. She grabbed her phone from the nightstand and turned on the flashlight. "Hello?" she called out, her voice trembling. No response. Summoning her courage, she swung her legs out of bed and stepped cautiously toward the door. The floorboards creaked under her weight as she peered into the hallway. It was empty. She checked the locks on her front door. They were secure. Feeling foolish, she returned to bed, though it took hours before sleep came again. The shadow returns. Over the next few days, the shadow in the corner became a nightly occurrence. It didn't matter if Sarah turned on all the lights or left the curtains wide open. As soon as the sun set, the shadow would appear. At first, it didn't move, but by the fourth night, Sarah noticed something different. It seemed closer. "Enough of this," she muttered, grabbing her phone. She downloaded a flashlight app and aimed it at the corner. The shadow vanished, but when she turned off the light, it reappeared, now only a few feet from the couch. Panic clawed at her chest. She called her best friend, Emily. Something weird is happening," Sarah whispered into the phone, explaining the shadow and the whispering voice. "It's probably just your mind playing tricks on you," Emily replied, though her tone betrayed a hint of concern. "Why don't you come stay at my place for a few days?" Sarah considered it, but decided against it. She didn't want to abandon her home over something that might be nothing. The first encounter. That night, Sarah armed herself with every light source she could find. She kept her phone in one hand and a small flashlight in the other as she sat on the couch, refusing to let her guard down. At 1:43 a.m., the whisper came again. "I see you." This time it was louder. Sarah's flashlight trembled in her hand as she aimed it at the corner. The shadow didn't vanish. It shifted. Slowly, deliberately, it began to rise, stretching upward until it resembled the outline of a tall figure. "Who are you?" Sarah screamed, backing away. The shadow didn't respond. Instead, it began to glide toward her. Panicked, she bolted for the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. She shoved her dresser in front of the door, her hands shaking uncontrollably. For hours, she sat huddled in the corner of her room, clutching her phone. She didn't dare sleep. The footprints. The next morning, Sarah ventured cautiously into the living room. It was empty, the corner now bathed in sunlight. She almost convinced herself it was all a bad dream, until she saw the footprints. Faint but unmistakable, muddy footprints trailed from the corner to her bedroom door. Her stomach turned. She hadn't left the house the previous day, and her shoes were clean. Someone, or something, had been in her apartment. Terrified, Sarah called the police. They inspected the apartment but found no signs of forced entry. The footprints they claimed could have been